Okay, everybody, welcome to yet another Nova Scribes. We are continuing on our series of process talks, whereby we invite graphic recorders and visual facilitators to talk to us through their process of how they do what they do. Tonight, I'm very pleased to introduce Jim Nuttle. So Jim Nuttle has been really a mentor and a sage and an inspiration and an oracle and all the things for a lot of people who are in the industry. I think, it's not that hard. Let me just make you a little bit bigger for folks. There we go. There's Jim.
Hi,
And
everybody.
just as I'm going to be showing some stuff, I'll show me too. Here we go. Just because I'm going to show you some stuff. But it's not hard to take a look at some of the folks who are out there and be like, Jim has trained them. He has a very unique style. He's been doing this for a very long time. And Jim, it's great to have you on Nova Scribes. Thanks for showing up.
My pleasure. Glad to be
All
here.
right, let's take a look at some stuff. So you sent me a few examples. If I'd stop getting blurry, you sent me a couple of examples, and I'd love to just jump into them and
Absolutely.
talk to you a little bit about it, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
All right, cool. So this is the first one, and Jim, one of the things that I've always admired about your charts, and actually, I'm going to start over here actually with this one. Let me jump around a little bit. Um,
Okay.
One of the things that I think that you do really, really well, and kind of uniquely, is that you have this way of using color to organize the layout of the chart. Do you think you could talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, that is indeed what I do. And I think my starting point for virtually every graphic recording is a blank sheet of paper. So I don't have any sort of a structure in mind really when I start, other than usually starting upper left, working my way across and down. Uh, Certainly, in this particular case, it was a focus group, so I knew that they were however many, four or five chunks that they were, buckets that they were going to cover. And if memory serves me correctly, it was a group of a couple of dozen people, and they sort of went one bucket at a time. Uh, no idea how long they were going to talk about each one. So, uh, like I said, upper left, so started with community, gave it some sort of, okay, this is the word community. That's how I'm going to do each of the bucket headings as I go through. And I tend to, most of my charts tend to kind of evolve organically. So it's, kind of, well, let's see, don't want to get right to the edge of the paper, so I'll give myself a couple inches there so that I can group the information about that bucket around that heading. And just sort of, again, I don't know how long they're going to talk, so it might be 5 items, it might be 15 items that they cover. So I'm kind of clustering and kind of growing things out from that starting point. And then usually it's the facilitator will say, okay, let's talk about advocacy now. So I know, okay, kind of give myself some more room. Probably in this case, like I said, I knew there were going to be four or five buckets. So, kind of judging by the amount of time I've got left, they said, what's going to be a 1 hour presentation?
Mhm.
And the first chunk took up 10 minutes. So, all right. So I'm gauging the amount of space I have left on the sheet. So as I go through, capturing the text and in black. So generally that's what I've got in my hand when I'm doing just the rough capture, is just the black for the text and some outline art. And then as we get closer to the conclusion, I'm checking the time and going, all right, I think we've pretty much captured everything we're going to, and then I can go back either in the moment or as often as not afterwards. Okay, how am I going to make sense of which mostly black and white here, and come back and help group the elements together. Brian, could you Could you put that back up? So you'll see that's when I start adding some of the visuals. For example, under advocacy, one of my go-tos graphics is the wave. It tends to be a well-used metaphor. Well, I got all that space down there, so I can go large with the wave kind of fill it out so that you'll see the amount of text for advocacy is less than, say, community or learning. So go add some visuals, use the cloud shapes, use circles to add that second color. And I think you'll also notice that even though each section is predominantly green, blue, magenta, orange, if you look over in community, there's some spots of orange in there. There's some spots of purple and down in there in the advocacy. I've added green up there in the organizational vibrancy. So it's not monochromatic. And this helps tie the overall composition together when you've got accent colors from the other areas brought in. Yeah, and then, like I say, some things we just my go-tos like a wave or or Sherlock Holmes up there in the middle or the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
And then other things, those are visuals that I use consistently. They're
Okay.
like my default, when or like light bulbs. When I can't think of anything else, okay,
I'll put a light bulb
I'll
in.
put
Yeah.
some light bulbs in there. But then, get over there knowledge and research, and then, sort of went to town there with our madman looking mathematician with the scroll and the graphs and the charts and very, contrasting with because this was an organization of arts educators. So the idea of kind of contrasting the quantitative data that in the research with the actual lived experience of most art educators.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
That's great, Jim. I've got a bunch of questions for you about this one. So it sounds like you've got a bit of a protocol that you follow, not to say that it's hard and fast, but the first thing that you do is like, you're listening for, you're allotting space based on the time that each conversation is there. So for example,
yes,
if you've got 60 minutes for this conversation, are you thinking, okay, well, 30 minutes into it, I should have this thing about half full? Is that sort of where your head is?
yes.
Okay.
But certainly in this case, like I said, I had no idea, and this happens frequently.
Mm-hmm.
The facilitator will say, and they'll actually get up in front of the room. I'm sure everybody's experienced this. All right, we're on a tight schedule. John, you've got 15 minutes to cover community. Well, 25 minutes later, John's still going at it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you start right, you starts writing smaller or abbreviating. That's always a judgment call as to, is John just going to keep going here? And sometimes the facilitator will make the call. Wow, this is really important. We need to
Mm-hmm.
talk about this topic some more.
So do you just like
You just kind
squeeze
of
it
go with
in
it.
the spaces in between, or do you maybe just like grab more paper? How do you handle that?
I rarely get more paper,
Okay.
and most facilitators, most groups I work with, tend to be pretty good with their own timekeeping.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know they're stopping at 10 o'clock with this first activity, and by golly, if John's going to talk for half of that, then he's going to get half the paper.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do, and that's part of, I think, why I had this approach of just kind of organically growing like a memory map in a lot of ways,
Hmm.
is that I can start shoehorning in uh, bits and pieces here where I need to. You know, if we're running out of space and there's that one last important item that needs to be added, um, I can just kind of tack it on and add
Yeah,
that color outline, that second color to keep it grouped in with the overall topic.
keep it grouped in.
Yeah,
And I notice that it help me if I'm wrong on this because I probably am, but it seems like you follow a bit of a protocol for the first thing is that you tend to capture first text in
yes,
black, okay?
yes,
And then like maybe like then you'll also do some drawing in black, maybe that's number two,
yes,
okay? And then at the very end, then you'll go back and you'll color your images. And then you might color containers like those clouds, like you were saying. Is that right? Like
yes.
at the very end. Okay. All right. Cool. So tell me about that. And why do you and you can actually you sent me this picture of yourself as like a work in progress, and it's almost all black. So this would be like before you went back and colored it, right? So tell me the advantage of doing it that way. How come you don't color as you go?
Because I don't want to be thinking about color.
Fair.
I
Okay.
mean,
That's fair.
it's really about being in the moment and listening to um, what's actually being said in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I'm keeping color in the back of my mind, and certainly the idea is that and this is a whole different this is a different situation, the micro one, but the first one that you had, the
Yep.
arts
Mm-hmm.
educators, is a good example of that. I know that I'm going to have that second color to help with the grouping and making sense of the organization and the flow. And you'll see the colors that I use. There's it contrasts well with the black, so it's not a
Yeah.
dark blue, not a dark green, and so it contrasts well with the black, but it also contrasts enough with the white so that if I choose to use that color, for a headline,
Yep. Let me
um,
go a little
it'll
bit bigger.
stand out.
So in other words, you tend to go with midtones,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Um, so that they're, as you said, good contrast between the white and black,
Yes.
and on both sides. Now, one thing I want to something I rarely see you do
Okay.
is to pick up the marker and write with color. I'll see you go over black that you've done with color,
Yes.
but it's not very often. Occasionally, I've seen you do it, but it's not very often that you'll actually like write in a color alone. Like you might
Yeah.
ghost it a little bit behind the black, but you'd never like write in that. Is that right?
For the most part, yes.
Okay.
And I'm so just a little bit about the tools. I use Noellen markers, and I use the
Mm-hmm.
basic black outliner ink for the text and the drawings. And then I use the big one markers, the wider markers for adding the color. And those are good for doing a headline. It's like a 300. I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
at Brian's chart there, like a 300 or 400. Um, so occasionally I will, and I've seen other graphic recorders do this quite a bit more. Uh, they'll make the decision to pick up that thicker color marker and do a headline or a block of text. Um, I'm a little shy about doing that because you know that should be something that you want to call attention to, whether it's
Right.
a headline or a you know the the uh, the one quote that's going to sum up the whole drawing. So I don't want to be in a position where I've captured what I think is the winning quote for the session, and then 5 minutes later find out that no, that really wasn't, that
Mm-hmm.
the speaker was leading up to something even more monumental. So that's why I kind of developed that approach of, there, like in the first drawing where I had the heading strategic planning
Hmm.
focus group, I captured that just the basic black marker just to have it. I knew that was going to be the heading, but just to have it on the page,
Hmm.
and then go back and add the with the thicker big one marker, go back and add the color over top of it. But um, I find myself, more recently just throwing caution to the wind, just doggone it, I'm going to do a blue headline here, or a
Yeah.
pull quote, much
Yeah.
like you would, on a a newspaper article layout or a magazine article. Well, we'll take you know a block of text and highlight it on the page.
Right. I think I've got most of what I see in your color palette. I mean, again, as you said, you've used the 400 and the 300, but mostly what I see you use are the ones that I've circled here. Have I missed any?
Um, yes.
Which ones
So,
have
and
I missed?
it's always evolving. So
Mhm.
the rich, I guess that's the 500. The rich golden yellow
Yeah, this one.
is a good one. Um, actually, I've started using the salmon pink, like
Oh, the
the
601? This one?
I got them mixed up. Yes, I think so.
Okay.
And like it's just, it depends on my mood a lot of times.
Hmm.
A lot, and the 301 turquoise and the 305, the ocean blue, those are good.
Oh, the 305. Yeah, the ocean.
And the
Yeah,
301.
I see you use the 301 all the time. That blue right there. And I think on this one's the if I'm getting it right, this is the 301, that's the
Yeah.
401, that's the 701, I'll tell you, I've also seen you use, let's go to this one because I see you use the 801 all the time.
Yes.
And okay, thumbs up. I hate this color. A lot of people love this color. You love this color. Kelvy loves this color. I can't draw. Somebody called it baby poop once, and I can't get that out of my head. Um, uh,
Yeah, it's
I'm glad you like
yellow
it.
ochre.
Yellow ochre. Okay. Baby poop. You say that one, potato,
Okay,
potato.
so here's the situation with this. So the Clearing is a consulting firm that I do quite a bit of work with,
Hmm.
and they were having an all hands day. It's like, in a hotel. It's big, very much a party atmosphere, and they had their keynote was Stefan Harris, and he came out, and he's a jazz music pianist, and he did a whole thing about as you can see there, about um, the impact of and the emotions that are evoked by specific musical notes. So the branding for the event were these colors, black, gray, and the kind of the yellow ochre. Um, and so I just went with that, and I thought it was a nice contrast between the yellow ochre and the gray and the black and the white background. And it was a fun exercise just to have a very limited color palette, and I think it went well with the visual image of you know the black grand piano with the black and white keys, and
Hmm.
just a little bit of gold to set things off. And this was probably about a 45-minute presentation, and it was interactive. So we was having it was probably 4 or 5 dozen people in the room, getting them up and moving and singing the notes, and then asking them. He would play a particular chord, and he would say, "What does that sound like to you?" And that's where the illustrations on the side came to. With that's like the shower scene in Psycho with the knife, or Cruella de Vil, or um, Wizard of Oz, and um, so I had fun with that, with kind of coming up with the visuals for each of those, because it was interactive, so we didn't know who was going to say what. with that.
Hmm. I
And then
I think. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say that, you see there that particular ochre color is, like I was saying, contrasts well with the black, contrasts well with the white. So I could bring it in to give it all that swooping movement, um, which were most of that was added afterwards.
Yeah.
Um, so because it was, wanted to keep up, I was just working in black and white to begin with. And then he finished, and I'm looking at the composition. I'm thinking, okay, um, because it was musical, the flowing lines really
Right.
really lend itself to that. So just went back in and added the flow with the gray and the yellow, and kind of wanted to keep the drawings, the renderings of the people and the central character, um, just free and spontaneous, in keeping with the jazz, um, musical theme.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful chart, and I actually I'm glad that you brought up the flow of this because I just want to point out, I mean, this is the genius of Jim Nuttle, right? But as he puts the gold here, notice all of a sudden he gives it this sort of directionality to the chart. And if I was going to read it, Jim, I would read it kind of this way in this spiral. Is that sort of the intent here?
Sure.
Okay, just making sure, that
Well,
I wasn't supposed to read it another way.
I'll tell you,
Hmm.
it started, and because I knew it was going to be this sort of um, one 45-minute, 50-minute presentation given by the keynote by Stefan Harris, I started off with the graphic in the center,
Okay.
and I rarely do this, or I do it sparingly. Try to actually capture a likeness of the person, and I figure, okay, it's not a full-on headshot. It's just him at the piano, and I could get um, abstract with it. And then, I mean, as a lot of these do, there wasn't a particular flow. He had points he wanted to make, listening beyond words. We improvise. Genius hits the mark, empowering the group. So I was capturing those kind of in a scattershot way. Is when he
Hmm.
got into the exercise where he was playing chords and asking people to what feeling does that evoke, when I kind of clustered those to the right,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and then kind of filled in. So the adding the swoops and the circles was a way of tying all those elements together, but
Mm.
it was not that linear of a presentation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it works, and I think that holds true for anything we do. It's the way I'm capturing it, the way I'm composing it, may be interpreted completely differently by anybody else who's looking at it. You saw a different flow,
Hmm.
and that's
Yeah, because I tend to start in the upper left-hand corner and then, just follow whatever path, my
mhm.
eyes take me on. Um, Before we get by the way, but one of the things I love about this chart is I don't know if you call it like the pointillism, but like the little the bits, that
Yes.
show up, here, and then you carry them on here, and then here, and then here. And that's something that I've seen you do before is actually using them to color, but also using them to color the negative space, to
Hmm.
like fill in around the thing rather than coloring the
Hmm.
thing that you're coloring.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, tell me about that a little bit.
Um, it works. It's one of those visual tricks that we all develop. You kind of try it once and you go, "Oh, that looks pretty good. I
Hmm.
should do that some more." And that, it's just basically holding the chisel point marker square onto the paper and just drawing straight down. Whether it's the wide or the width or the thinner portion of it, and it works as most of our conversations are, there's always a digital component to it. So, okay, we're talking digital.
Yeah.
So I'll do that, just like that effect behind Stefan's name. That's just a great way to suggest um, it looks digital, and it gives it a little bit of flow, and it gives it a little bit of so that helps in this case, behind Stefan's name kind of helps set that off just a little bit, and behind the grouping there in the lower left-hand corner.
Hmm.
I use it, and I'm sure we'll see it in other charts. Um, so it's more of a solid background. Same technique, same vertical lines, and doing rather than just getting in there and scribbling.
Hmm.
Having the marks that you're putting on the paper, having them align, uh, gives a little bit more cohesion.
Nice.
So it looks random, but at the same time, there's some structure to it
Yeah.
and energy.
Since you're talking about the using the flat side of the chisel tip, this is going to be super geeky, but somebody asked, and I wanted to know the question of this too. So Kathy actually asked this one: have you ever used the art marker? The brush tip of the big one, or I've primarily seen you just use the chisel tip big ones.
Yeah, yeah. I have rarely, and I mean, it gets back to why I'm working in black to begin with. If it's one less thing to worry about. Oh, should I, would be cool. Let me get my brush tip out. I'm trying to stay focused. So I got one marker that I'm doing the initial capture with, and then and the other actually, honestly, Kathy, it's how many tools do I want to carry around?
Right.
So most every job I do fits into one messenger bag. I've got my black markers and I've got my color big ones. I don't carry any number one, the basic sized markers in color. So all my color markers are the big ones, and all my black markers are the small ones, except for one or two large black big ones.
Hmm. Yeah, that's something that I'm continuously envious of you about. The first time you and I worked together, you showed up with like literally a roll of paper with a couple of straps on it so you could put it over your shoulder and a hip pouch, right? And that
Oh
was
yeah.
it with markers, just a hip pouch. And I was like,
Well, I
I'm
had a
doing this
bag. I'm
wrong.
sure I had a bag, but
No,
yeah.
I don't think you had a bag. This was this. I'll show you anyway, we can argue about it later, but it was like it was just like a hip pouch, and I was like, gosh. And meanwhile, I'm showing up with like my Suburban that's got 70 linear feet of Neuland walls in it and stuff. I definitely go heavy. But yeah, just like that minimalist approach that you've got. And I think Jim, the cool thing about your charts is that they have a real signature style to it. Like I can look at this and be like, okay, that's Jim Nuttle. I
Mhm.
can see that. And by the way, I just realized there's another color I should have added to this, which is of course the 303, which Casey
Yes.
and I have a
The
love-hate
pale blue.
relationship with, but yeah. Um, so yeah, talk about this one a little bit because again, I'm seeing this one doesn't have that same kind of color cluster structure, but
Right.
at the same time, it's still, you can tell that there's some structure to it. You can tell that there's some layout going on. So how
Yeah.
did you do that?
Well, this was a presentation. So it was a 2 day um, meeting summit, what have you, at sponsored by Deloitte
Hmm.
for 4 or 5 dozen corporate controllers. So that bring them all together, and they brought in uh, Dr. Yosef and Lucas Miller, who do these. This is their research, becoming superhuman. They've done research, they've written books, and it's all about you know how our brains work and how we can kind of optimize brain function during the workday. So it was like an hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half in the afternoon, continuous presentation of their research. So it was basically data dump for 3 hours. So it was one continuous narrative rather than, we're going to talk about advocacy here, and then we're going to talk about communications over here. It was just, they started talking, and I was hanging on for dear life as they go along. So it was, it wasn't as deadly as I make it sound. They were very good presenters, and they, very engaging. Um, but it was just a continuous, um, the presentation. Now you'll see the, clean up your hygiene, multitasking, drive your day.
Hmm.
Those were actually instances where I pulled out the color marker and just, um,
Yeah.
this sounds like headline. And more than likely I was taking cues from their PowerPoint presentation.
Hmm.
And as I'm sure you all know, a good presenter will tell you what they're going to tell you first, and then they tell you, and then they come back and told you what they just told you. So they kind of queued it up that, these are the big, um, buckets that we're going to cover. So
Right.
I, kind of, okay, I'll take a risk. I'll go ahead and just do those colors. And if you zoom in, you'll see like the word hygiene, the word drive, the word multitasking. I went back and then with the thin, the basic black marker, just did a internal inline just to give it to emphasize that word within the headline.
Hmm. So speaking of the inline, I'm glad you brought that up because we had a question. How did you do this white inline for Superman? Did you just leave a gap there, or did you go back
Um,
over it with something else?
probably probably not. So I've been playing around with the different acrylic white markers that are out. Neuland makes them, Sharpie makes them. You go to the art supply store and there's, Bruce Van Patter is one person I know does that consistently.
Hmm.
He'll do a he'll do a solid black shape, and then he'll go back in with the white acrylic marker and add text, which is a fantastic effect. Um, I must be doing something wrong because it never covers the first go around, and you can see that there on Superhuman. Some of the white is more opaque than others. Um, Especially is some it works a little bit better on the black outline ink,
Hmm.
but with the water-based ink, um, it takes several coats to get it in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I try to avoid thin white lines against a color background. I think I decided in the moment, oh, let's give this a try and see what happens.
Hmm. No, I appreciate that. The other thing that I appreciate about your style is just how consistent it is. So you mentioned, for example, the clean up your hygiene, drive your day, the multitasking is a myth. That when you're doing those call outs, that they're, clearly in the same style. You're not flipping over and using green or orange. It's something that's easily identifiable as at the same level of importance. And even if you
Yes.
dive down another level, intention, sharing, separation, that's also really consistent there. And that's something I've
Mhm.
always admired about your work, and I've tried to get there. Amanda's got the question, would Posca pens work for that white that you're going for?
Um, I've tried, maybe. I don't know if I've tried them specifically for the white.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, like I said, I've played around with the Norland brand didn't do it for me. I need to ask Bruce exactly what he uses because he's had good luck with it. I've seen other people do it as well.
A little bird told me that he uses Montana markers for that,
Hmm.
Montana acrylics. So
Yeah.
I may have heard that somewhere. Um, the other thing that I want to point out is like what's not here is so you had mentioned you've got the names Dr. Youssef and then Lucas Miller. What you don't have is like the photorealistic or portrait or the caricature where you're trying to get their, their pictures. And I've watched graphic recorders like struggle over trying to get it just right. If you're trying to do a portrait, like you just write their names, you're like, okay, let's get to the
Yeah.
content.
I have a phobia about well, maybe not phobia is the right word, but I trying to capture a likeness of a live person who's right there in the room with me. I just
Hmm.
lock up. I start second guessing myself and thinking, oh, they're gonna hate it. They're gonna think it looks stupid. They're gonna think I look stupid because I tried it. So and people, clients will say, oh, it'd be great if you did a caricature of everybody. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, I'm sure it would.
You don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but B, it's not just not a strength of mine,
Hmm.
Mark Korsak, another fellow graphic recorder and buddy of mine, he is much more comfortable, and he can do just a simple capture of somebody. But I think the biggest reason for not using it, just it takes up time.
Yeah, it does. And
Now,
space.
but so having said all of that, if you go up to the dirt one,
The dirt one. Okay, let me see if
number
I'll have to
two.
look around for it. Oh, this one. Okay.
Okay, so this was I actually had a lot of fun with this. So Mike Rowe, who hosts the TV show, whatever it is, Dirtiest Jobs, or he was a keynote at this financial um, conference, and I had like 30 or 40 minutes to get set up, and it was a big auditorium, hotel ballroom. He was up on the stage. They had me backstage, so I'm just watching the whole thing on video, and I looked him up online and did not too bad of a likeness of him standing there, and then really spent some time doing the whole lessons from the dirt, and I added the client logo. Um, so those were in place when he started talking.
So this right here was all pre-charted, right?
Yes, and the AFP 2017.
Yep.
Um, so again, it was a one person. He's going to be talking for 40, 45 minutes. So I'm kind of tracking that as he goes through, and he tells his story. He started off, and it starts right there to the left of the word lessons.
Hmm.
He said, you know, human interest reporter for a TV station. They said, find something interesting, and he went interviewed a guy who repairs sewers in San Francisco. So you literally the flow of the drawing goes down. You follow him into the sewer, and he's telling all these stories about just how awful and disgusting it was. And it's a great, very engaging presentation. Uh, so it's like literally and visually, it's the low point.
Hmm.
It's what's happening in the sewer, and then he kind of comes up. You kind of follow it up to the right, and he has this revelation. Hey, this would be a great idea for a TV show, and that was his aha moment. And then as you come up to the right and across the top, he talks about how the work, led to this very popular TV show. And then that led to, uh, he started a nonprofit all about, um, promoting job skills training and
Hmm.
encouraging people who may not go to college to go learn a trade and make a living. So, that was the flow there, but it was um, one of those rare occasions where I basically had time on my hands, and I thought, well, spend a little bit extra time doing an illustrated title, and then add the client logo. And
Yeah, that's gorgeous. And again, this is one of I just the illustration on this is just absolutely amazing on this. So, without diving into this one in particular, I want to jump into some of your other ones that you've got
sure.
here. Just because I'm, same thing, time equals space. I want to make sure that we get through a few more of these just so people can see what you do. I want to keep it on your paper charts for right now. So this one's kind of interesting. I'll tell you what, in this case, could you tell me about like the like navigate me through this chart? If you were going to show this to somebody, like where would you have them start on this one?
Well, it really starts where all of the flow lines come together there on the left-hand side.
Okay. So it's kind of like this in this sort of way.
Yes.
Okay.
And then there's the vertical axis that comes down um, from unity down, yes, like that,
Like that. Okay.
which just is how it evolved. So this was a two-part day-long uh, planning or public forum. So Zion National Park, um, everybody comes in there's two entrances, the west entrance and the east
Right.
entrance, and everybody comes in at the west. So they were gathering members of the community to come together and talk about what kind of, that's where it comes up, the East Zion experience.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they wanted to have some sort of a visitor center, interpreter center at this second entrance to the park. So they had local ranchers, they had the indigenous community there, they had, members of the business community, and it started off the person who was donating the land, the local land rancher said he showed a picture of his son. So that childhood experience, which is right there at that crux of the where
Yeah.
the two axes cross, he showed a picture. He said, "This is the experience I want my kid to have outside in nature." And it was one of the few visuals that was shared that day.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay. So I mean, it was a good. I think it made a perfect point. And then really, it was a lot of themes that came up: transformative experiences, opportunity of the moment, unity. They had uh, quite a extensive representation of the local indigenous community, so they wanted to make sure that their story was told.
Mm-hmm.
So that was in the morning, and then in the afternoon, we were at a different location, and that's when we got into the right-hand side, connection to land. We were actually on the site of where the center was going to be, so it became much more of a, well, what do we want to see? You know, it's got to have parking. We have to make sure, emphasize the connection to the land,
Mm-hmm.
the stream, the pathways, the signage, a lot of discussion about experiences with, the Native American community of their their artifacts, their heritage, their history literally being trampled on.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody would come in to build a visitor center and they're just digging up a sacred space. So they were very adamant about the how that would be integrated, and it was not just a gift shop and a bathroom. It was an
Right.
actual interpretive center. So those were the themes. And then so I had 8 hours working on this one
Wow.
image.
Okay.
So I was able to start adding the landscape elements there in the background and as a way of connecting. So from local landscape, global perspective, kind of continuing that horizon line on the suggestion of horizon line across, and
Mm-hmm.
then picking up again in the afternoon with um, they were sharing some of the site plans and some of the drawings of the uh, proposed visitor center. So kind of did a quick sketch of that and got a sense for how they were envisioning the flow of the pathways and the space and the natural features.
Yeah. It's really lovely, Jim. I'm just wondering, was that the Paiutes there?
I'm sorry.
Were those the Paiutes in
Yes,
East Zion? Okay.
yes.
Yeah, that's amazing that you got to work with that population. That's really cool.
Yeah, and the fun thing was that you see in the lower right hand corner
Oh
That's
yeah,
the
there it
word
is.
for yes,
Yeah.
that's that word there, mukum to vip. And I know I butchered that. They said, well, this is our name for this area.
Hmm.
And they said, well, how do you spell it? And she said, well, we don't have a written language.
Yeah.
So she had to sound it out phonetically. But
Amazing.
no, so this was done a couple of years ago. So I'm not quite sure where things stand with the actual visitor center just now.
Yeah, that's amazing. And to your point, so Sarah noted in chat that she loves the Horizon line and that she's stealing it. So I don't think there's such a thing as stealing.
No.
And Jim, you've been generous enough to share what I might call your visual vocabulary. You talked
Hmm.
about how you use the wave and the pipeline, and I think I've got a couple of charts of yours that have got pipelines and waves on it, not to mention like the light bulb, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that there's a few people that you can start to see what their visual vocabulary, the folks that go through the Grove, they have the horizon line and they use landscape as metaphor. People that tend to follow Kelvy, they tend to be more like on the micro level with like, cattails and grasses and puddles and ripples and things like that, right?
Hmm.
And I think, depending on who you find yourself aligning with, picking up kind of like the more just those different sort of visual languages start to show up.
Yeah.
Um, let's do another one. And again, if anybody's got any questions, just feel free to drop it into chat. How about this one? This one is just cool. I
Oh,
love that you just sort of went, we talked about like your very contained use of colors and using that. It's like you took your rules and just like threw it out the window on this one. You're like, I'm going to use all the colors, right? So tell me a little
oh
bit
yeah.
about this one.
Well, so Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, um, I think he's at Georgetown. And again, I actually, if you see there in the center right of the chart,
Hmm.
the gentleman in the blue suit. Um, so one other rare instance where I tried to depict that person. He is. I'm sure you can find him on YouTube. He dynamic speaker, very outspoken, and was really, as it says there, a conversation about race. So, um, the audience was probably majority minority. So,
Hmm.
I chose this one. I like the drawing as well, but um, I was uh, felt conspicuous in the room, and it's just something we have to deal with. And they were touching on some very um, important topics that frankly made me uncomfortable. I'm feeling like, uh-oh, I didn't do all this, but talking about the experience of blacks in America and white privilege, and thinking, okay, I'm that guy in the bubble up there talking about inherited opportunity, but you go with it, and it, like I said, was a very dynamic, and he's name checking Lin-Manuel and Jay-Z and Mahalia, and he's talking about you know the Civil War and the experience of blacks and the 1619 Project, and uh, having to break through these bubbles, the Tulsa race riots, um, and I will say he uh, when at one point in the speech he said, "Let me ask you a question," and he stopped. He said, "That's right, I said ax." So, which is why I put so much emphasis on it, because he put emphasis on it.
Hmm.
Um, and it was a progression from talking about the history of the Black experience, and then coming forward and like touching on so many positive examples and vision of the future. Diversity is not a threat. So the color really, that's when the color really started to come out, was, you know, uh, bright, diverse, colorful, energetic, dynamic, life of the mind. So it ended on a very optimistic and positive note.
Yeah.
And
And I really want to commend you. I think that this was probably the most tactful handling of that particular issue that I have ever seen. That was just,
yeah,
that's graceful and like I
thank you.
said, tactful right there. Let me ask you, let's do a speed round, okay?
Okay, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
how long was this chart? So how many hours were you working on this one?
So he probably spoke for an hour,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and probably, so, again, I was there with my black markers capturing, I probably lettered the the client logo there in advance.
Yep.
And then probably over the course of the day, came back and put in another hour or two
Okay.
into, coming back with the color. Um, may have added some details, but probably,
About three
you know, it-
hours max on this one, you think?
yeah, 3 hours.
Okay. And then, by the way, you're like, yeah, I don't draw people, and then like, or portraits, and there's four of them on this chart at least. Um,
Okay.
okay. What about this one? How long was this chart? How long were you working on this one for?
This was a day. This was a
This,
full day. And
okay.
this was actually three 4x8 sheets of foam core
Oh, wow.
on standing on end and placed side by side.
So like, kind of like this.
So it was whatever that is, 12 feet wide by 8 feet high.
Yeah, I got you.
Um,
Okay. I have like 200 other questions for you, but just let me do a couple of these. How long
okay.
was this one?
Um, that was probably about an hour. That was,
1 hour.
you
Okay.
know, get we was going to be get in and get out.
Yeah.
The previous one, the one about diversity, and this one I had all
Mhm.
day. You know,
Yeah.
I we were in, it was a conference and they had the room all day. That last one that you showed, it was going to be,
Uh, this one here?
yes, that one was, we've only got this room for an hour and a half.
Hmm.
And then I had to get on, this was up in Philadelphia. I had to get on the road. So it was like, oh, just get it done.
Yeah, got it.
So you could, and I think you can see that you know, the drawing's a little bit freer. The coloring is a little bit more, I don't want to say slapdash, but yeah, it was really, you can see the lettering, learning, innovation was, um, you can see the marks of the
Yeah,
of the
it's a
marker.
little bit looser. There's a little bit more of
Yeah,
the artist's hand is just, visible in this one, I think. But
yeah.
it just drives me crazy how like an hour chart of yours looks like an 8 hour chart of mine.
Oh,
All right, I gotta ask this question. Your charts, especially in post-production, always look super clean, just like super clean.
thank you.
What do you use for that? Do you use ScanScribe, TurboScan, something else? What do you typically use?
So for an 8 foot wide by 4 foot high chart, I
Hmm.
take my iPhone 11 Pro and I take a picture. I take it in two halves, so I can get it just that much more detail.
Hmm.
Uh, take a bunch of shots, get back to my studio, open up Photoshop. Photoshop's got a neat little feature where
Yeah, photo merge, right?
you can splice together
Mhm.
two halves of the same image.
Okay.
And then in Photoshop, it's just you start off with the curves with
Hmm.
the white level eyedropper, put it on a what's supposed to be the white background, and that gets rid of a lot of the color cast. Well, and it helps to get a good photograph to begin with. So,
Yeah.
not necessarily bright light, but even light with few, shadows, from the downlighting, picking up the ripples in the paper. So just flat light, even light, bring it into Photoshop, splice it together, work with the curves, and then I go in with the dodge tool
Hmm.
and just you can set it to clean, highlight, midtone, or shadow. And I just said highlight, clean it, just go over it. You have to. It's a little bit more involved than that, but that's basically the approach I take. I've done scan scribe once or twice.
That's cool. I learned like 5 things just now that I don't do. I usually use layers, not or levels, not curves. So I'll have to play around with curves and see if I don't get a better result that way. So thank you for that.
Oh, sure.
We didn't cover all your stuff. We certainly didn't even touch your digital stuff, by the way. I wish we'd had time for
Your
that. We're
pitching.
coming
Yeah.
close to the end. I want to give other folks on the call a chance to ask you any questions that they haven't. But before we get there, um, Jim, any like parting words, especially the folks who were like just starting out with this?
Uh, Keep at it. Um, Hopefully, Brian will share my contact information. This is a sincere offer. Email me. That would be the best way to get in touch. Always happy to set up a time to talk, ask questions. Um, Happy to share what knowledge I can and answer questions. And it's uh, I think it's a great way to make a living. So I encourage you to keep at it, keep learning.
I did just share your contact information and I did find out why I couldn't find that before. Thank you for that little beat that I needed. It's worth
Oh,
pointing out the IFVP mentoring program has just launched. You may have seen that today. There was
yes.
an announcement that went out on LinkedIn. And Jim is available, so you can find out a little bit more about the mentoring program, or you can just reach out to Jim
Yeah,
directly. Not seeing any
absolutely.
more questions, so let me go ahead and end the recording. But before I do that, Jim, let me just say thank you so much for your time and
My pleasure.
generously sharing all of your expertise with us. Um,
Been
this
a
was
pleasure.
great. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all.